Jim, Rowan, how's it going? It's the 17th of October. It's a really nice day. I haven't been outside. I'm a little worse for wear, to be honest. I celebrated a friend's birthday last night, and evidently in celebrating his age, I forgot my own because not feeling too good today. But the show must go on, and it must go on like this. Apparently, the YouTube analytics suggest that people like this more than they like my MS Paint skills. So I guess I'm stuck doing this like this for at least a little while until I figure out something better. So, actually, I've got to do a pose as well for the clip now, because now my face makes up the picture. So, what do the kids do? I don't know. I'll use that. And I suppose now's the time to say, like and subscribe. If that works, does that work? I guess everyone says it must work. I don't do it when they ask. I wait till the end of the video and think, is this something that I wanted more of? And then I would click subscribe. Do it whichever way you like. I guess it's just a reminder. What I would like to ask of you, though, more than that, is because unfortunately this last night was good. It came at the end of a long week in which I did not have a lot of time, and for that reason the G1 beat me. The G1 beat me. I've only watched the main events, so that's what I'm going to go through today, kicking off from what I covered last week, all the main events since then. And what I ask is, if you did watch the other matches on these shows and there's a particular match that you think I would really enjoy, please comment that. I would like to watch the other matches. I will try and get around to the ones that stick out to me, but yeah, I mean, I guess I'll quickly cover them, and then the end of the tournament next week. And if you're listening to this and you're wondering why I'm talking about video stuff, that's, it's going on YouTube, but it also happens to be posted as audio. Enough of this mumbo jumbo. So last week I ended with the 7th. So we start here on the 8th was the next show. Excuse me, I'm sorry. It is what it is. I mean, look, I always do these on Sundays, and this is the shape I'm in on this particular Sunday. It is what it is. So, on the 8th, we had B block in Kochi Prefectural Gymnasium. So the B block standings at this point going in: Okada and Jeff Cobb on 10, Evil on 8, Tanahashi on 6, Sanada and Tai Chi on 4, Tamatonga, Goto, Yoshihashi, and Chase Owens all on 2 points. By the way, the few places that I visit to discuss or kind of look at news and stuff for New Japan, they tend to be pretty good when it comes to spoilers. So I haven't really been spoiled with anything. So I'm just going to read the matches. I'm not going to read the results, and I'm not going to continue with the points after this. After just starting with them there, because I've actually tried to avoid that, the results. So on the 8th, Tamatonga versus Yoshihashi, Chase Owens versus Hiroki Goto, Jeff Cobb versus Sonata, Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Evil. On the face of it, I don't think I'll go back and watch any of those unless someone says, hey, you got to go back and watch this one. Of those, I would suspect maybe Tama and Yoshi might have been okay. Jeff Cobb and Sonata might have been okay. Owens and Goto was probably okay, but... And then Tanahashi, Evil. But, okay, the main event was Tai Chi versus Okada. And not to suggest that it's a rare exhibition from Tai Chi, but he seems to have a disdain for Okada in the way he fights him. He chokes him a few times. He wants to choke slam him, but it isn't until Okada's first Rainmaker attempt that he lands the choke slam, and it's a counter to that, to the Rainmaker. The Black Mephisto is reversed into the money clip. That's escaped by Okada, but he's kind of on a roll until a thrust kick from Tai Chi, and he clobbered him with that kick. Like, that was a real kick. Instead of taking advantage of that, though, Tai Chi's hubris... His what? Hubris. I just realised I didn't...
Hubris.
Hubris. I just realised I don't say that word out loud. It sounded weird coming out of my mouth. Hubris. You got to check yourself. Got to check yourself. Tai Chi's hubris gets in the way as he initiates a fighting spirit battle of kicks. Right. Just a quick note. This is probably how this entire podcast is going to go. This is the level my brain's working at the moment. I've dropped a few creases. This is terrible. Okay, I'm not stopping. I'm not. I'll do it live. Okay. So he does the Black Mephisto again, but it's countered this time into that Okada, like the sunset flip thing that Okada does now. Not the sunset flip, but like that stack pin style. That's kind of... Actually, that isn't a sunset flip style pin. I don't know why I wrote sunsets. Yeah, that's wrong. The pin that he beat, I think he beat Suzuki with it. He's beaten a couple guys with it recently. It's just kind of a stack style pin with the legs hooked. But that doesn't work. Tai Chi kicks back to an advantage. He lands a dangerous backdrop. Okada desperately scrambles away from a third Black Mephisto attempt before landing a spinning Rainmaker, only for Tai Chi to remain standing, kind of like Shibata in that classic they had, Okada and Shibata in 2017. Power Struggle? I don't remember specifically, but it's one of my favorite matches of all time. And I think to date, Shibata's last match. But yeah, similar to that one. That was the first time I ever saw anyone just stay standing from the Rainmaker. Tai Chi does it here. So that's pretty cool. I mean, it wasn't the full Rainmaker, but still. And Okada tries again. Tai Chi wins. They instead with an axe bomber coming back the other way. Okada, sorry, I just bumped the table. And I need to cough again. Okada pushes through to regain some control, but the Rainmaker is countered into a Gato clutch for a really close pinfall. Tai Chi lines up Okada like a sumo, but runs straight into what Kelly calls a landslide. But the landslide was a Samoan driver. It was like fireman's carry, then over the top. Whereas Okada's like, he has him over the shoulder, like this, like power slam, and then he drops him down. I think I called it, it's like a version of the Michinoku driver is what I called it on the last podcast. Or, I don't know, someone recently at some point. But yeah, Kevin Kelly's calling it the landslide. It's not exactly the same, but whatever. Maybe that's what Okada's calling it. I don't know. But anyway, he hits that move, and then he hits the Rainmaker, and Okada wins. Which, it was a good wrestling match, but actually, what I thought of it was that it wasn't so much the wrestling that made it better than good. Sure, it was a good wrestling match. They're both good wrestlers. But I think what was most interesting about it, and the reason it might be worth going back and watching, is just the characters. They're both very they've both established their characters in a way that they can portray those characters consistently throughout the match. And that's kind of how this match was contested psychologically, was that Tai Chi is really kind of just, he wants to be in Okada's spot, and he is kind of like I mentioned the word disdain at the beginning of this. He's got disdain for Okada, that Okada has what he has, and Tai Chi doesn't have that. Tai Chi is disdainful that he didn't have the same. Because I guess he just kind of feels entitled to it. But the problem with Tai Chi is that he doesn't seem to really want to work for it. And that's kind of funny. I mean, he's got a little extra around the waist. A little. I mean, he's very fit. But it kind of speaks to that just slight lack of discipline or dedication that is stopping him from being at that level. But he just doesn't seem to think that he needs that. And I don't know, I just saw that throughout this match. And it's kind of this insecurity that he gets in his own way with, and is the reason that he lost this match, because he's doing things like not staying on top of an advantage, for example, and kind of just wanting to prove something by showing off or mucking around with Okada a little bit. And so that's what leads to him losing this match, but at a higher level. That's why he isn't on the same level as Okada, is because of that attitude. But I enjoyed this match. I thought it was good. And afterwards, Okada recognizes that a lot of the fans were on Tai Chi's side, but he stands here the winner anyway. He tells them to realize there's no stopping him. Excuse me, sorry. You might think, was this worthwhile? Me doing this at all? I don't know. Is it ever? Tai Chi backstage, so that was Okada in the ring. Tai Chi backstage, he's sulking, he's saying, oh, right, well, I don't look so cool now. I was supposed to become a Yokozuna. What was the point of all of this? And, I mean, that's what I was talking about. Like, he wants all the reward without the effort, without getting through, like, perseverance, getting through stuff like this, sacrifice. Like, he's not really willing to take those extra steps to get to that level. His talent has taken him this far, and he's almost kind of, because of the talent that he has, it's like having a rich kid. You give them everything, and they kind of don't. I'm not a parent, but this is what people say. You give the kid everything, and if they don't have any struggle in their lives, then they don't really learn how to deal with the struggle when it eventually comes. And I think that's maybe similar for Tai Chi, that he's had all this talent, so he's never really had to work that hard. But now that he wants to be at the very pinnacle of the business, of the sport, he's not realizing, that's actually the problem, that he's not realizing that he's going to need to sacrifice, he's going to need to persevere in order to get there. He's kind of just wondering why it doesn't just fall on his lap. But I just think that's a really interesting character. And he plays it great. So he kind of Tai Chi this is asks the people behind the cameras if his tournament's over, but he says it in a way that he's already resigned himself to the fact that he's lost. And Miho's crying, and that was it. And then he leaves. They both leave, and then Okada's answers some questions diplomatically. Not very interesting. Okay, so that's number 8, or the 8th, I should say. On the 9th, it was in the Edion Arena, Osaka. This is A block, which has Zack Sabre Jr. on 10 points, Ibushi on 10 points, Khan, Kenta, Shingo, Ishii all on 8 points, Yano on 6 points, Yujiro and Tangaloa both on 4 points, and Naito's 0 and out. So these matches were kicked off with Kenta versus Zack Sabre Jr., so that might be worth watching. Yano versus Yujiro, pretty sure I'm not going to watch that. Shingo Takagi versus Tangaloa, that might be decent. Kota Ibushi versus Greatokan. Oh, sorry. No, that's the match I watched. That's the main event. So, I like this match. So Greatokan versus Kota Ibushi, and for all the talk that we hear from Kevin Kelly about Greatokan and his martial arts background, we only really see it in little bits here and there. In this match, it made up most of the match, so it was really kind of like shooty, not shoot fight, but shoot style, in the striking and the grappling, and that was most of the match. It was a little bit, well, I guess I could say slow, maybe measured is a nice way to put it, but I really enjoyed it. I like that style personally, and I think they did it well, and it's just different. It's just a different kind of match. And years ago when I got into New Japan for the first time, I remember that being what drew me to it, was that the matches aren't all the same style. Like, different wrestlers have different styles. They do different types of wrestling matches. And this one showcased that. I mean, Kenta, I don't know what kind of match Kenta versus Zack Sabre Jr. was. I imagine rather traditional. It's certainly a striker versus grappler. Yano versus Yujiro would have just been very silly, but it's a different style of match. Takagi versus Tangaloa would have just been two kind of hosses, basically, just powerhouses beating the crap out of each other. And then Greatokan versus Kota Ibushi is this like technical shoot style type of match. Like, that's 4 different types of matches on the same card, and they're all doing pro wrestling, but it's all, it's a variety show in that way. It's all pro wrestling, but they're very different matches. Whereas I don't need to pick a particular promotion, but I will. WWE matches, they're all like, there's a WWE style that they all kind of do, and that's fine. A lot of people like that. I just am pointing out that it's this one stood out even for New Japan, and I liked it. Okay, so it was like 15 minutes in when Ibushi latches on a figure 4, just kind of to remind us that, oh yeah, that's right, this isn't just a fight, this is a pro wrestling match, and they can use pro wrestling moves. But that was kind of a turning point in how Ibushi was approaching the fight, because he really was there to be like, okay, Greatokan, you think you're a martial artist? Let's do martial arts. And there was a kind of a funny point in the match where Khan's doing different stances. Like, I don't know if it's a karate stance, but it was a very wide stance, and sorry, you can't see that, but he like shot, the punch came from the hip with the, so a traditional, if it, maybe, I don't know if that's kung fu or karate, but he has been doing that straight right punch as a move of his recently. And then he hit a not as good side kick to Ibushi's head, and Ibushi kind of at that stage, like I said, he's kind of changing what he wants to do with this match, and he kind of wants to turn it into a battle of guts rather than technique, is what I saw. So he starts taking the technique out of it. I guess he might have felt like he might have been a bit outmatched there, because Khan has such a wealth of experience. It's not just how good he is, it's how many disciplines he understands that might have had Ibushi a bit nervous. Not to say Khan was dominating or anything, but it was time for Ibushi to change the matchup. He lands a Bomaye, that gets a 2 count. Khan does realize that his game plan that Ibushi was kind of allowing at first, he's no longer imposing that game plan, so he goes to an ankle lock. He wants to control the match that way. Ibushi manages to stand and leap up and kick his way out of it, then comes back with a low takedown, and Ibushi hits him with the knee to the head as Khan was shooting in. So this is the Nakamura spot that they did endlessly when Nakamura was in Japan. It comes from, if you listen to my podcast about the old my kind of history podcast, you'll have heard me talking about this. The old Nakamura and Alexei Ignashov match, where this was an MMA match, and that's what happened. Nakamura shot in for a takedown, and Alexei just conked him with a knee, and Nakamura went straight down, but he got straight back up. But the force of the knee was such that the referee, as soon as he saw the knee connect, was like, that's it, the fight's over. So it actually ended up being overturned as a no contest because the referee apparently stepped in too soon. Because in fairness to Nakamura, he bounced straight back up. And then they had a rematch and Nakamura won, I believe. But it was such a, I guess it was just a really, I don't want to say defining, but certainly significant moment in Nakamura's MMA career, and it was carried over into pro wrestling. So I know it was in the Wrestle Kingdom match with Takayama. Was that 2004, the main event for was it the NWF title and the IWGP Heavyweight Championship? I think so. I remember them doing it in that spot, but in that match. But that spot would come up all the time. Quite a tangent there, but that's the spot they did in this match here. So Ibushi being the Ignashov and Khan being the Nakamura and copping the knee in the face. And then Khan dodges a Kamigoye, but not a head kick. That gets another 2 count. And then his nose is pouring blood, by the way, at this stage. Like, quite a bit. I don't know if it was that knee or if it happened earlier. But Ibushi tries the Kamigoye again. This time the claw from Khan. He catches the knee. And then rather than doing the eliminator where, of course, he grabs their face, he tries doing an eliminator on Ibushi's knee and, like, picking him up that way. And then... So Khan's got the knee and he grabs the back, and as he goes to lift with this knee, Ibushi just uses the other knee and just hits him in the head again, and that gives him the chance to then Kamigoye Finn. It was a really interesting match. Ibushi coming away the winner, of course, after that Kamigoye, and a good match. It just interesting in how different it was, or at least in how it began. And I think what the story was that that finish with Khan trying that weird eliminator, I think he was just out of his depth. Like he 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 wasn't able to impose his game plan. He was happy when Ibushi was just letting him do it. But then when Ibushi decided, no, I'm going to take this match in a different direction, and have the match I want to have, that's when Khan was like, he just got a bit lost. And I mean this in kayfabe, by the way, not that the match between them was going wrong. I think this was the story, was that Khan just wasn't really able to impose his game plan, control the match, and so and I guess he found it hard to predict what Ibushi was going to do, because Ibushi doesn't think about anything. He just goes ahead and does what he feels like doing. So when he tried to be unpredictable by doing that weird eliminator with the knee, like, he's just out of his element. Like, he doesn't know how to do that. He knows how to do his style, and then when he tries to be unpredictable and do something different, it doesn't work for him. He doesn't have that experience. So Ibushi was able to expose that and come away with the victory. But just I'm really impressed with how quickly Khan's improving. I mean, that was one of the matches I would say go back and watch. And I don't think the first time I've said that about a Khan match. His Zack Sabre Jr. match was really good. He's one of the guys that have really, I mean, I don't know, obviously no one really knows how things would have gone if the likes of Will Ospreay, Jay White, and such were in the country and able to participate in this tournament. But wow, what a tournament this guy's having! Not just in terms of who he's beating, just the matches he's having. It's been really impressive. But anyway, the promo here, Ibushi, he calls out to Greatokan before Khan leaves, and he says that the match was fun, and he was glad to see Oka back in the ring tonight, which is I think his name's Tomoyuki Oka, so it's his real name. But I don't know exactly what he was referring to there by calling him his real name, Ibushi. Anyway, he goes on to say he's one step closer to his fourth final in a row. Interesting that he would say that rather than his third win in a row, but that's also an impressive record, 4 finals in a row if you were to make it. Backstage, Khan is frustrated. He seems to feel patronized, presumably telling Ibushi not to underestimate him. He says, "Don't underestimate me," presuming that was to Ibushi. He also calls him a bastard. Ibushi says it's been a while since they wrestled that style and is genuine in asserting Khan's technique is incredible. And he felt the weight difference too, but he wants to fight Khan many more times. What time are we? Oh, jeez. The 12th in, is it Zabio Arena? Zendai? This is Block B again. There was Tai Chi versus Tamatonga, Sonata versus Yoshihashi, Okada versus Chase Owens, Goto versus Evil, and the main event was Jeff Cobb versus Hiroshi Tanahashi. So Cobb overpowers Tanahashi early, no surprise. But then Tanahashi he starts playing some cat and mouse games. So, I mean, it's kind of like Kenta, but when Kenta does it, he's a heel. When Tanahashi does it, he's cute and clever. But when Cobb catches Tanahashi and makes him pay, he kind of drives Tanahashi down on his knee, and then he starts strumming his back like a guitar. Tanahashi does manage to hook on a cloverleaf after a comeback, but it looked like it was costing him more energy than it was to Cobb, just because he was having so much trouble keeping it locked in and holding all that weight up in, well, it's not all of his weight, but even still, just those heavy legs. He was struggling with it. And there I mean, there was a game plan from Tanahashi to go after the legs, which we've seen so many times, but he wants to remove that power of that base of Cobb. Cobb tries to suplex Tanahashi to the outside, but he fails. Instead, there's the high fly flow crossbody to the outside. Cobb's comeback is stalled when a spin cycle's countered into a sling blade. The high fly flow, Tanahashi comes off the top. Cobb catches him, turns it into an F5, except he doesn't even go down like an F5. He just kind of tosses him spinning through the air, and Cobb stays standing. But Kevin Kelly calls it an F5. The leg prevents a quick cover. Because Cobb's leg prevents a quick cover because he's selling the leg really heavy. So Tanahashi kicks out when he eventually gets there. There's a tour of the islands, but that's turned into an inside cradle. That's a 2 count. Cobb quickly punishes that with a German suplex and then ruthlessly moves on to the tour to finish Tanahashi off and win the match. This, it wasn't a fancy match at all, but it followed a logical course, and I thought, Cobb's selling maybe was a bit inconsistent, but it was still a good match. Very good. So Cobb kind of claps at Tanahashi and then asks the crowd if they're sad that he beat the Ace. He says that was a piece of cake in Japanese, and then also says undefeated in Japanese. So he seems confused almost. He's definitely confused when it comes to his promos. Is he trying to be... He's trying to be heel, but he's also just... I don't know, I think he just stopped trying to be something and just... Even if he's going to be bland, it'd just be better than this contrived version of whatever he's attempting to do. But anyway, backstage, Tanahashi's lying down on the concrete. He said he used nearly all of his moves and he's still lost. He mentions Okada again, but this time it's to say he understands his struggles with Jeff Cobb. He considers his record and acknowledges his chances of winning aren't high, but he'll do his best until the very end. Cobb says he is his destiny to win the tournament. Evil's up next, and he's not putting up with any of his garbage. He calls himself the Imperial Unit. It's kind of a weird nickname, but I don't mind it. Could be worse. All right, but that was the end of that one. So yeah, Jeff Cobb still on top of that block. Back to Block A on the 13th, also in Zabio. Satoshi Kojima came back to face Kodabushi in the Naito fill-in match, but the Block A matches were Ishii versus Yujiro, Kenta versus Tangaloa, Yano versus Zack Sabre Jr., and the main event that I watched, Greatokan versus Shingo Takagi. And it says a lot for Khan's tournament that I really look forward to this. I was like, this should be a banger. Because, before this tournament, would I have said that? Absolutely not. Khan was still just kind of finding his feet, but he's just been really good in this tournament. So, looking forward to this one. And the story was predictable early. It was just, a couple of really prideful guys trying to outmuscle each other rather than take the less resistant path. But the match continues back and forth. Khan makes the mistake of trying to rub in an advantage of his, and Shingo attacks him with rage, but then accepts one back and kind of goads him into that fighting spirit battle. There's an attempt at a lariat that's turned into a nasty back suplex by Shingo, only for Khan to pop up, and then similarly Shingo pops up when Khan nails him with a bicycle kick, and then he pops up, hits a lariat Shingo, and Khan pops up and hits a backdrop on Shingo, but then Shingo's the first to get up after the backdrop because they both went down, and then Shingo hits a sliding lariat. They were doing the Ishii thing of, I can see how people would think it's no selling, and I guess in a kayfabe sense, it kind of is no selling in that they don't want the other to realize that they're hurt. That it's almost like, kind of like psyching them out, but they're pushing through the pain. And they did do a little bit of selling. I guess you could call it delayed selling. They sold a little bit after the move, but they still went ahead and did the next move. And then at the end, they both collapse and they're spent as a result. Khan locks on a sheep killer, and then he switches to a power slam for a 2 count at about the 20-minute mark. He goes for the eliminator. Shingo transitions into a rolling armbar. Khan tries to use that claw again. So that's his right hand, I think. But now Shingo's kind of targeting that arm that he did the armbar on, and that has the claw on it. So Khan goes into a bit of desperation in one of his attacks, and it kind of leads to him just giving Shingo his limbs so he can set up Made in Japan. That gets a 2 count, and they just kind of bash each other back and forth for a bit. There's, similar to that Ibushi match with Khan, a similar spot, the Nakamura spot again, but this time instead of a knee, Khan catches an elbow from Shingo, or a forearm, I guess, maybe. Then they both attempt their finishes. Khan wins the race to a lariat over a pumping bomber. Shingo dodges another eliminator, and then lands a pumping bomber. That gets a 2 count. Then he hits Last of the Dragon. Shingo wins. This was a good match as well. I can't quite put my finger on. Sorry. I can't quite put my finger on what stopped it from being better, or being kind of what I was hoping it to be, I suppose. I think maybe the psychology was off a little bit. I mean, they had those no selling spots, but that's not quite it. Maybe the pacing of the match wasn't quite correct, but something about it was just a bit off. I just didn't think it was quite the level it could have been, but I'm sure they'll have plenty more chances to run it back, and I'm sure the next one will be better, and they'll be good opponents for each other. So after the match, Shingo exclaims he's finally at the top of the block, although he's also relying on other results, which he doesn't like, but he'll just keep fighting on like a champion. Backstage, Khan knows what us imbeciles are thinking, that it only matters what happens in the ring, but he didn't cut corners. He understands the result. Shingo says Khan looks 50, but he's a monster in that ring. He looks ahead to Yujiro. He wonders why he's even in the tournament, and just reiterates his position as world champion. Okay, and then the last one here that I watched, the last one that's occurred to date, is on the 14th in Yamagata City General Sports Center. B block again. We had Tai Chi versus Chase Owens, Hiroki Goto versus Sonata, Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Yoshihashi. That might have been alright. It should have been alright. It should have been good. And there was also Evil versus Jeff Cobb, but the main event and the match I watched was Tama Tonga versus Kevin Kelly. That's correct. Versus Kazuchika Okada, actually. Tama Tonga versus Okada. And Kevin Kelly, speaking of him, did compliment Jado on his jackedness as he came out with Tama Tonga, and I've got to agree, he is looking jacked. And I know the Tongans have been, well, Tama Tonga in particular, have been working hard lately. I wouldn't be surprised if Jado can bench more than them, big fellas. He's looking toit like a toiga. Anyway, it's a stiff task here for Tama. I mean, not just in kayfabe, in stopping the juggernaut that is Okada, but also the main event spot, and he's against Okada, as in he's working with Okada. He's in a main event. He's just being given every opportunity to have a good match here. Like, I think he's kind of wanted to be this guy for a while. This prove he's good enough to be a singles wrestler, and it's kind of like they've given him every opportunity here to do that, but now the pressure's on. Like, okay, so are you going to take the opportunity? And I don't always speak well of Tama. I don't always love his matches. I have been impressed with him in this tournament. I certainly don't always love his promos, but I went into this hoping that he was able to do it. Like, I want Tama to do well. But I was also cognizant of the fact that even if he did have a really good match with Okada, it might just go back to Okada. Like, oh, wow, Okada was able to have a good match with Tama Tonga. Anyway, the match started with kind of the standard stuff. Well, those, the chain wrestling holds that often don't last that long. Okada was holding on to him and, treating him as real submissions. And you could, like, the look on his face was kind of, this is what I think of you. Like, I could beat you with these little kind of nothing moves that, I let go of on other people. Like, you might tap to this. Okada gets that kind of just dull look on his face. Like, this is boring. Like, I don't care about you is kind of what he is showing in an arrogant way. But that's when Okada's the best, when he just is embracing that he thinks he's better than everyone. So it I did think maybe this was that he wanted to bring out an aggressive side of Tama. Like, he wanted to poke the bear and get Tama to be aggressive so that he would make mistakes in his haste. So there might have been a game plan behind this attitude from Okada. But Tama finally finds himself in the lead when he's brawling outside the ring, though instead of taking advantage of it, when he gets back into the ring, he just kind of allows Okada to come back in his own time. Though he still maintains the advantage when they do get into the ring. I guess at least he's not being hasty. Maybe that was almost an exercise in not giving in to Okada there, and what he wanted. But he does stay on top, kind of in an old-fashioned sense, or with old-fashioned moves, just like headlocks and just beating him down a little bit. A flapjack stunts Tama's momentum. And then Okada gets on a bit of a roll. He tries to go for the neck breaker, but Tama fights this off. Okada continues again after they leave the ring for a bit. He gets another kind of normal Okada string of moves together. He lands the diving elbow, hits the Rainmaker pose, but Tama dodges 2 Rainmaker attempts. Sorry, bumped the screen, bumped the tape. Tama Tonga dodges 2 Rainmaker attempts, and then he hits a Tongan twist. That gets a 2. He tries a gun stun. That's reversed into a spinning Rainmaker. That's a 2 count. And but otherwise, Tama Tonga's doing a really good job of stifling Okada. Like, even when Okada does get string a few moves together, eventually Tama Tonga figures out a way to just disrupt the momentum. So he's doing a good job of that. And Okada finally hits a tombstone. He misses the Rainmaker. He stops 2 gun stuns that Tama tries. And then Tama tries to outsmart him he does outsmart him, ducking a Rainmaker and then stopping so that Okada goes up for the drop kick and just lands without making connection. And then Tama tries a gun stun again, and Okada counters that into a Rainmaker, but then, or he tried to, Tama counters that into a bloody Sunday. And if I didn't know better, I'd think that gun stun was a red herring. Like, he just did it knowing Okada would reverse it with the Rainmaker, and then he had that in his back pocket, the bloody Sunday. And there was a really good post on the New Japan, I think it was on the New Japan Reddit, about, should I credit someone? It's kind of loud when I go clicking places. But they put up a post of Prince Devitt giving, well, they said it was, here it is, by Katie Senshi. Tama Tonga has not forgotten Prince Devitt's advice from 8 years ago, but they do a silly little promo here where Devitt counters a Rainmaker by Anderson backstage. But this sequence where Tama Tonga, he counters the Rainmaker. Oh, hold on. This is when the drop kick and then gun stun, Rainmaker, ducks it, floats over, Bloody Sunday, and they show the Prince Devitt doing the exact same thing when he faced Okada. So that's a cool clip that they put that together. But even cooler, if you're a Tama Tonga fan, was that after this Bloody Sunday, he lines up the gun stun. Okada resists once, twice. He goes for a power slam, or maybe actually Okada might have been going for that over-the-shoulder landslide, as Kevin Kelly calls it. But I guess that must have been what it was going for. But Tama Tonga flips that over, hits a gun stun. That only gets a 2 count though. So Tama Tonga goes to a double underhook pile driver and hits that. And what I was going to say, if you're a Tama Tonga fan, that gets him the win. He beats Okada. And I'm so glad this wasn't spoiled for me because I was so surprised. But when he hit that double underhook pile driver, I was like, holy shit, that's it. He's probably going to pin him with this. And he did. And it's a massive win. And it was no fluke either. It was a perfectly executed game plan against maybe a complacent Okada. Like going back to that start where he was kind of messing with Tama Tonga. Maybe that wasn't so much game plan as much as just complacency, just kind of like arrogance, just thinking I'm going to win this easily. But that's not to take anything away from Tama Tonga in kayfabe. He played this great. And it was a really good match. I mean, look, I also said at the beginning of this match's review, big opportunity for Tama Tonga. And, I'm not a massive Tama Tonga fan. I went in hoping that he would do well, but I'd be quite happy to sit here and tell him it sucked. It didn't. It was really good. He pulled through. This is one of the matches that I would go back and watch again. It's funny though, because it was kind of a... sorry. That, 12th beer maybe coming up. So this is... I mean, it wasn't... It's kind of hard to explain. The flow of the match wasn't necessarily the greatest to watch, but that's what Tama Tonga's game plan was, and that made sense. It didn't make for a match that kind of flowed in a way that was appealing as a wrestling match, but it made sense in terms of a wrestling contest, what Tama Tonga was doing, and it still turned out to be a really good match. And he was there for that finishing sequence when it's a big main event match and they're kind of trading counters to finishes and whatnot. Tama Tonga was there for all of it. He didn't miss a step, so credit to him. He did great. Well done, Okada, maybe is what I should be saying. At the beginning I was like, well, Okada might get the credit. I guess Okada just did a great job. I'm sorry about my throat. Okay. But and he sold the win big too. Just, it meant a lot to him, and I don't know. You could tell there was real emotion in that. It mattered to him to get this big main event singles victory over Okada, I mean. And that's what he said in his promo, actually, afterwards. He kept it in very simple English, I think, for the sake of the Japanese, but he just said something like, I'm Tama Tonga, and this is, I've made my own history today, just something like that. And backstage, he says that the G1's given him strength, and he asks, who you with? To no one in particular. I'm guessing that's more Bullet Club rubbish. but whatever. He kept it short, which is great because I kind of wouldn't have blamed him for being excited and rambling on after a match like that. But he kept both his promos there pretty short. Also, I didn't mention Jado. Of course, Jado's there, but he doesn't get involved. He's been letting his guys, the Tongans, the Gorillas, just wrestle without interfering, which has been great. I appreciate that, and I wish he would have a word to Dick Togo. But yeah, that's it. So next time on Dragon Ball Z, it's going to be, oh bloody hell, is it tomorrow? It's tomorrow. A Block on the 18th. There'll be, well, Satoshi Kojima versus Greatokan. That's not a part of A Block, but that does mean that Khan was meant to face Naito on the last day, which, would have been good. But, you know, hopefully Naito's not far off. I don't remember what his injury was. I hope it wasn't too bad. I hope he's not too far away. But I mean, Kojima versus Greatokan could be really good, actually. But in the A Block, there's Kenta versus Kodabushi, Ishii versus Yano, Yujiro versus Shingo, and Zack Sabre Jr. versus Tangaloa. Is that really the main event? And on the 20th, so that's Wednesday, B Block, Tanahashi versus Tai Chi, Okada versus Jeff Cobb, should be good. Goto versus Tamatonga, Yoshihashi versus Chase Owens, and Sonata versus Evil. Oh, right. Their matches, I remember their last match. It was supposed to be this grudge match. You know, they're broken up as one of the most successful tag teams of recent history, and they just had a match. So hopefully Sonata is feeling good for that one. On the 21st is the finals, so we'll figure out who won this whole thing. But, and of course, I'll cover all that in the next podcast. I will say again, please, if you listen to this and some of these other matches that I didn't review, again, I haven't really had any spoilers, so I am really happy to watch them. And if I find the time, we'll go back and watch a few. But yeah, if you could recommend me the ones not to miss, please do so. Thank you very much for listening and perhaps watching this. Until next time, have a good one.